Well, a very good evening to you and welcome to the most comprehensive bulletin in the country. This is certainly KTN Prime.
Yes, thank you very much for starting your new week here with us. Our sign language interpreter is William Silla. Well, we waited for it and it finally came, the much-hyped Saba Saba Day.
And court held its controversial public rally at Uhuru Park.
Yes, reactions are mixed about the rally, also about its outcome as per the expectations.
But now the big question is, what next?
That's right. Well, our coverage of the Saba Saba rally begins right now.
To join the conversation on Twitter, hashtag remains Saba Saba.
And from our talk studio, we'll be joined a little later on by Yvonne Okwara, who will have a panel there to put this matter into perspective. So the much-anticipated Saba Saba rally closed with 13 resolutions announced by the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy.
Court now wants Kenya to hold a national referendum to change aspects of governance in the country.
And top on court's list is the disbandment of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission.
KTN's Asha Mwilu attended the Uhuru Park rally and now reports.
We launch today the Okoa Kenya, OK, a people's movement to defend our constitution, support one another in good and in bad times, protect the gains we have made in democratic governance, and rededicate ourselves to national unity and peaceful coexistence. 2, demand that the Jubilee administration addresses the escalating cost of living by reviewing the taxation regime, failing which we will boycott the consumption of all goods and services whose prices are beyond the reach of the common mwananchi. 3, convene an all-inclusive National Referendum Committee, NRC, for the purpose of preparing the people of Kenya for a national referendum on the critical challenges facing our nation. Having lost all the confidence in the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, do now demand its immediate disbandment and the establishment of a new electoral board.
Demand the immediate end to corruption, wasteful spending, reckless borrowing within and by the Jubilee government. We demand that the Jubilee administration immediately cancels the inflated security camera contract irregularly awarded to Safaricom, and that Safaricom withdraws from the contracts and subjects itself to competitive bidding. Demand that the Jubilee administration takes immediate steps to withdraw our gallant soldiers from Somalia to join our forces in securing our nation from home. Demand that the Jubilee administration take visible, decisive action to deal with the runaway insecurity, including holding senior security officials accountable for hundreds of Kenyans who have been killed and maimed in the various attacks and conflicts across the country. 9.
Some of those 13 resolutions that were read out at Uhuru Park today. There were a lot of other going-ons there, and Asha Mwilu has been there all day. She compiled this report.
After hours of anticipation, a packed Uhuru Park paved way for the 3 principles of the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy, CORD. The monumental Saba Saba Day had brought the city to a standstill, and CORD had the full attention of the country. CORD has now pushed aside the call for national dialogue and has launched its Okoa Kenya campaign, driven by 13 resolutions.
Convene an all-inclusive National Referendum Committee, NRC, for the purpose of preparing the people of Kenya for a national referendum on the critical challenges facing our nation.
Although it has not specified what the referendum specifically seeks to change, the opposition says it will ensure all Kenyans are included in the process and that the people get to decide the issues they want addressed. The IEBC was also top on CORD's list of resolutions for Kenyans. CORD has accused IEBC officials of bungling the 2013 general election and have been campaigning for the appointment of fresh commissioners.
Having lost all the confidence in the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, do now demand its immediate disbandment and the establishment of a new electoral board.
CORD leaders who have been campaigning against the government's policy on security says their demands must be met.
Demand that the Jubilee administration take visible, decisive action to deal with the runaway insecurity, including holding senior security officials accountable for hundreds of Kenyans who have been killed and maimed in the various attacks.
The opposition leaders want KDF soldiers withdrawn from Somalia, arguing that the incursion has left Kenya vulnerable to revenge attacks. CORD further wants the cancellation of the 17 billion shilling security tender awarded to Safaricom to install CCTV cameras around the country. They argue that the tender should be awarded after a competitive bidding process is followed. In their nationwide campaigns, CORD has been lobbying for public support to demand equality and cohesion through the implementation of the crucial TGRC report.
Reject attempts by the executive through Parliament to bastardize the report of the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission, TJRC report, and demand the immediate implementation of the original and unadulterated report.
The Raila team has also accused the government of skewed public appointments favoring specific regions in Kenya. The opposition now wants the Public Service Commission to audit all public appointments made by the president.
Demand that the Jubilee administration addresses the escalating cost of living by reviewing the taxation regime, failing which we will boycott the consumption of all goods and services whose prices are beyond the reach of the common mwananchi.
In addition to boycotting overpriced goods, CORD is demanding that government wastage be reduced and that 40% of the national budget be allocated to the counties. A day that CORD leaders termed as historic, ending peacefully here in Uhuru Park. CORD supporters have gone home, with Kenyans waiting to see whether these 13 resolutions will indeed seek solutions for Kenyans, or if this will be just another round of politics. Ashamwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
13, that's the number of resolutions announced by CORD, and they are demanding, among other things, a national referendum to change aspects of governance. And tonight, on the big question, we are asking, do you support CORD's call for national referendum? Do you support CORD's call for a national referendum?
Yes, do share your thoughts with us, and you can do so by tweeting us at KTN Kenya, at Kachungira, and at Wilson_Mburu. Also add the hashtag Siasa Saba Saba to that, and we'll get your opinion. You can also send us an SMS. 22155 is the number. Do begin with a yes or no, and then your comment, and we'll have a poll result for you towards the end of this bulletin. Now let's go to our talk studio, where Yvonne Okwara has a panel from both sides of the political divide to talk about just what happened at Uhuru Park today. Now, this conversation did sort of begin yesterday. If you watch Checkpoint, you will remember that we were talking about what might happen. Yvonne, we have seen the events of today. How do we go forward?
Nancy, we have seen the events today, and some are calling it an anti-climax, and we'll get to that in just a moment. My guest tonight, Jeanette Mohammed, Member of Parliament, Suna East, and Kipchumba Murkomen, who's the Senator for Elgeyo-Marakwet County. Thank you both for joining us. Was it an anti-climax? A lot of people saying everything that was said, one, at the rally today, I think with the exception of the national referendum, had already been said. And couldn't this have been said at another forum other than calling for a rally in the capital?
Yes. No, Yvonne, first of all, we must agree according to ourselves, that the event today was a very successful event. And it was a very important day in our calendar and the history of this country, Saba Saba. And I know the expectations of our supporters and expectations of Kenyans were much bigger than what happened today, because people expected other things that we are aware of. But we had to show leadership, and we had to show our followers leadership that we don't want to do anything unconstitutional. We want to do our things constitutionally so that we can be law-abiding citizens, and we can have, this country belongs to all of us, whether you're in Jubilee or CORD. So for that reason, it was not an anti-climax, it was the beginning of now the real business of CORD. Initially, we were talking about, discussing and dialoguing these matters with the Jubilee regime. More dialogue. No more dialogue now.
Okay. So
now we are going to dialogue with the people through a referendum.
Okay. Kipchumba, doesn't CORD have a point though? And when you take a look at the massive crowds, not just at Uhuru Park, but at various other venues, they're obviously speaking to a constituency that resonates with a lot of the statements they're making. And some saying that Jubilee rubbishing this seems a little arrogant on the government's part.
Let's start with first what happened today. I think today was a spectacular failure.
How so?
Raila promised that this will be a defining moment. Indeed, it was defining in terms of the downfall of CORD's popularity. They told us that it will be hailstorms. The clouds do not even form. The truth, Yvonne, is that CORD's machine is now running not even on the tire. It's completely deflated. It's running on the rim. Kalonzo promised the crowd that he had come with his blanket and boots, that he was going to sleep in Uhuru Park. It never even happened, because those expectations and the things they were planning for are things we've always said, that we have a forum to deal with those issues. And CORD's agenda is nothing. They just want power. The integral issue for CORD in all this debate is about removing IBC and looking for another Kofi Annan. Right. And they announced that they need actually a UN referee to give them possibly half.
Those are not the only issues, and we'll get to some of those issues in a moment. They have talked about runaway insecurity. They have talked about the high cost of living. They have talked about corruption within the government. All of these, which we know
was that the only forum to say it?
Perhaps not, but do you not think they have a point? Look at those crowds that were at Uhuru Park. Do you think they do not resonate though with what the leaders are saying?
It's a whole waste. I mean, you see, the reason why we were elected to lead is to solve problems, which were there. Otherwise, there was no reason for us to be elected.
But some of those problems persist, Kipchumba, do they not?
Exactly. And those problems have been there for as long as Raila was in office, Kalonzo was in office, Wetangula was in office.
However, you are now the ones in office, and you now have the mandate.
Absolutely. Okay. And that is why we are dealing with the problems. When Americans had the September 11 scenario, the Republicans were in office. The Democrats didn't say that we need a mass action, rallies and whatever. They told the president, and they didn't even give the president conditions. They told George Bush that we have a problem as a country. Whatever support you need from Democrats, we're here for you. But these are the ones that are talking about demands, and even the demands they're talking about are issues. I have said, and I without any fear of contradiction, Wetangula, Kalonzo and Raila have been in politics for as over 100 years.
All right, okay. But however, that is not an excuse, because so you are now the ones in power, Kipchumba. So,
absolutely.
You know, the buck now stops.
It stops with
within
us.
the Jubilee
And that's
government.
what I'm saying.
Let's have Jeanette in for a moment.
The buck stops with us. We are solving those problems. It cannot be solved in rallies.
We'll get to how you're solving. We'll get to how you're solving. No,
did not even get a
Kipchumba,
quarter.
we'll get to how you're solving those problems in a moment, because runaway insecurity is something that's really high. Jeanette?
Yvonne, what Senator Kipchumba Murkomen is doing is just grandstanding, as usual, by the Jubilee administration. Those people we are speaking to today, and the people we spoke to at his backyard in Eldoret, and the people we spoke to in Kisumu, in Kakamega, are Kenyans. We were not speaking to chicken. We were speaking to Kenyans who belong to this country. And what we are bringing forward, and what we are telling the Jubilee administration to do, are things that are being given to us by the people on the ground. Number two, the crowd you saw in Jubilee, in Uhuru Park today, that's a huge crowd. That's a crowd that URP cannot raise in this town. He knows very well that they are not in this town themselves.
So, but
having said that,
the issues they are raising are valid, and the people they are speaking to is a constituency.
Let's discuss the issues.
We will get to that in a moment.
Now, these are issues. Initially, we said we want to dialogue with the government on these issues as opposition. You know, it is URP who are feeling that when we dialogue with the government, we may take their positions. We are not interested in joining this government. This is a sick government.
You can see
that
the
is
things
going
he's
to get.
about.
This is a sick government that might not really.
You can see the things he's talking about.
Absolutely.
Now, we wanted to give dialogue a chance so that we can tell them that these are what the issues that are being raised by our people on the ground. They refused. They said we cannot dialogue.
And so now you're going into a referendum.
And you know, Yvonne, we are not doing Kenyans favors. As opposition, we are constitutionally mandated organ of governance as opposition.
Please hold that thought, Jeanette. Hold that thought, Kipchumba. We will come back to this, and we will now get into the issues.
It can't go and challenge Yvonne.
It will go. You will be able to challenge it after. We do have some stories, and we will come back and we will get to the issues now. The IEBC, security, corruption. We will get to that in a moment. Nancy, over to you. As you can see, this is definitely something that is still heated up until this point. Back to you for some more stories, and then we'll come back and get to the issues. Nancy?
Yes, we'll get back to that lively debate, but right now let's tell you what did happen at Uhuru Park. The Coalition for Reforms and Democracy has declared that it has abandoned demands for national dialogue and now wants a national referendum. During the afternoon rally in Nairobi, the leaders also made a threat to stay put on the grounds until their issues were addressed. Now, it was a style that had been used, that if it had been used, would have been similar to the Tahrir Square revolution of Egypt. Rita Tinina tells us more.
From as early as 9 a.m., CORD supporters started making their way to Uhuru Park, where hundreds of police officers were keeping watch. Initially, everyone entering the grounds had to undergo a security check before the crowds became too much to handle for security officers. Song and dance kept the crowds busy for the better part of the morning before the men of the day, CORD principals, arrived at Uhuru Park shortly before 3 p.m. The mood was one of anticipation, and the leaders kept the crowds guessing.
Basi leo ni leo. Asemaye kesho. Asemaye kesho. Nilimwambia naona manini imetanda.
The rally was a response to the government's failure to convene national dialogue, but here they were changing tact.
Lakini kwa sasa wakati ya dialogue umekwisha. Ni wakati ya action. Sema action.
Basi mimi natangaza kwa sababu hawataki mambo ya mazungumzo, we are vacating that matter of dialogue. Hakuna dialogue tena.
Umechoka. Sasa tunasema wakati ya mazungumzo umekwisha sasa.
They would not reveal their exact next course of action, but their talk hyped emotions here.
Because Uhuru refused to come to talk to us, we'll decide how to talk to Uhuru. He's not the one who's going to decide how he's going to talk to us. We are the one deciding how we are going to talk to him. You can frustrate a dream. You can postpone a dream. You can lock up a dream, but you can never kill a dream of the people. Mimi niko tayari. Ukisema fire, niko tayari. Ukisema mountain, niko tayari.
But the much anticipated course of action was not initiated. To many, the much publicized Saba Saba rally may not have lived up to its billing. With 13 resolutions and no timelines, it may have just opened another chapter in the usual government versus opposition politics. Rita Tinina, KTN, Uhuru Park.
Now, Uhuru Park activities aside, Nairobi was a city that was almost deserted today as most people opted to keep away from the central business district and children stayed away from school, as Sharon Momanyi now reports.
Strong police presence made for a big element of the day, with over 15,000 police officers deployed to man strategic points in and around the Nairobi Central Business District. This brought about the sense of a controlled security situation in the city during the rally. But while this was the case, empty parking lots and uncharacteristically low traffic was evident in and around the CBD. However, a section of workers and businessmen went on with their activities as usual, not cowed by the perceived uncertainty of the security status following the much anticipated rally.
Because wanaitisha vitu hata kuliko kawaida, hata nikashindwa kwa leo kuna Saba Saba kweli ile nilikuwa nasikia.
Sasa wale wakifunga na sisi tufunge, na biashara ni yetu, serikali iko na sisi, tunajua kuna security, kwa hivyo lazima tungekuwa kaji.
The somber Nairobi mood would be broken by the chants of youth marching to Uhuru Park for the rally. Then, a brief moment of tension as the youth engaged in running battles with security officers, a situation that was soon brought to control. Learning was put on hold in some schools in Nairobi, including Moi Avenue Primary School in the CBD, where the less than 10% of pupils in attendance were forced to study on their own. The situation was similar at Twin Star School in Imara Daima, where the school was closed for the day.
Kwani ni vibaya kwa sababu wameketi tu nyumbani, hakuna walimu. Siku moja ina matter a lot. Kwa hivyo si vyema kwa sababu ya siasa za Kenya, saa zingine kukua watu wakiwa na wasiwasi hivi. Haitusaidia hata kidogo, kwani inaturudisha nyuma kimaendeleo.
In Mokoro Wanjenga, one of the areas put under heavy security watch during the rally, it was business as usual. Only the businesses would be affected by the events of the day.
Biashara iko chini. Ile biashara iko hapa ni ya hotel ya kukula. Kukula ni watu wanakula sana. Biashara hakuna. Kuna pesa inaingia.
Ni madogo. Maana hatuwezi kupigana. Huyu ndugu yangu utapiga ndugu yako.
It was a day that bore a lot of anxiety among Kenyans with fear of insecurity, but a day that can be said to have passed with a sigh of relief for many. Sharma Manyi, KTN.
Now, even as CORD leaders rallied their supporters at Uhuru Park in Nairobi, there was an uneasy calm in several parts of the country.
We join Linda Ogutu now with a look at how Saba Saba Day was marked in the counties.
We launch today the Okoa Kenya.
While CORD leaders were rallying up the masses in Nairobi for Saba Saba at Uhuru Park, there were different reactions to the rallies in different parts of the country. Heavy police presence was witnessed in the coastal city, with the county commissioner carrying out aerial surveys in the county. Few businesses were operating as traders were cautious of any eventuality that would affect their businesses.
Leo ni kama Jumapili ukiangalia mji leo. Ushona nini kwa sababu ya meeting itakayofanywa Nairobi.
Mombasa County Commissioner Nelson Marwa says the aerial survey will not stop until he is sure that the county residents are safe.
Na helikopta ingine ya usiku wakifikiri wanaweza kujificha hata usiku. Tutamount ile ya mataa.
Things were not different in Kakamega.
Town haina watu, biashara imerudi chini.
For Nakuru residents, it was all about coping with the heavy police contingent that was deployed in the area. For them, Saba Saba meant little or nothing.
Hata kesho tuendelee hivyo. Wale ni wakubwa na sisi tuko wadogo. Sasa wale wakipikana huko hatuwezi kuingilia maneno yao, kwa ajili sisi ni wale watu wale wa kujitafutia. Tukiingia kwa wale watakula mshahara, sisi hatukuli mshahara.
Attempts to create chaos by youth in Kisumu were however thwarted by the huge contingent of police in the town. Some tried to light bonfires in the middle of the road to no avail. The presence of the police in the town seemed to agitate the youth.
Polisi ndio wametanda hapa. Hata polisi wakitoka hapa saa hii mtaona tuko Saba Saba.
Ama askari watolewe hapa wapelekwe huko Mpeketoni na Lamu na wapi. Hapa hivi hakuna vita. Sijui tunawanangoja nini.
For now, many wait to see the aftermath of the rally and what the CORD leaders will have achieved at the end of the day. Linda Ogutu, KTN Prime.
Well, in the last week or so, social media sites have been inundated with messages of nationalism and peace. And for those who did not attend the rally at Uhuru Park, they could comfortably follow minute-by-minute updates of the events on their new media feeds. But back in 1990, the luxury of citizen reporting did not exist. The journalist was the sole source of information. A veteran journalist, Kathleen Openda, spoke to KTN about her experience in covering what became a historic event.
The first Saba Saba was a little scary. There was a lot of tension in the country. People had been detained. There were stories of people being picked up, politicians locked up. I think there was one activist who had even hidden in the US embassy or something. So there was a lot of tension around. The key players, well, two key players around that time, Kenneth Matiba and Charles Rubia, had been arrested. At least that's what we heard. And so the dawn of Saba Saba was a dawn of real tension in the country. We tried to hang around and see what else could be happening, but nothing was happening. And so we went to other areas of the city just to see, you know, what was going on. Was there activity in other areas? Because then there was no mobile phone, there was no internet, Twitter, you know, so you had to physically look for it. And we were somewhere down in River Road and reporting on some clashes. And I got separated from my camera person, Mutali, I remember it was. He was up on a roof trying to get the all whatever aerial shot that they always try to do. Yeah. So I got separated from him, and then I see this GSU guy bearing down on me, and I'm like, I'm a journalist. Trying to show him my notebook and my pen, and he's like, nyinyi ndio mnaandika twaf, you know, twaf. So both my elbows, and you know, so that I wouldn't be able to write the story. I don't know. Yeah. But it was scary in the sense that that kind of violence I had never experienced. When the story was so blatantly killed, I mean, we'd been there, we saw it, and we knew that what was being carried as the news story was not the truth. So it kind of, for us journalists, put us on the front line of agitating as well for this greater democratic space, because if we could not tell our story, if we could not report on the truth, then what kind of society were we living in? Would I be able to practice my craft as honestly and as professionally as I would like to be, or as I was trained to be? It meant no, that it affected not only then the political figures, it was a fight for every Kenyan.
In the aftermath of the violence, however brief and however brutal,
for a few days after that, we would still report on various skirmishes around Kamkunji, the Machakos country bus station area, run-ins with the police here and there. And also, at that time, there was a lot of, you know, the activism, especially from the lawyers, from civil society. And so there was all this activity, people giving statements, people protesting, people making their views known. And all it was really was a demand for greater democratic space, for plural, multi-partyism, more parties than one, and just an agitation for change. And I think after Saba Saba, the impetus grew stronger because then those voices were not quelled. It did not go away. It was not actually in the mainstream, because I remember even around Saba Saba, some officials tried to pigeonhole it as a particular ethnic group that was in power, used to be in power, was no longer in power, was the one that was agitating for change. Yeah. But when you looked at the whole scenario, there were Kikuyus in there, there were Luos in there, there were Luyas, there were young people, there were old people. So that theory did not work.
Well, this conversation about Saba Saba continues on Twitter. The hashtag is Siasa Saba Saba. Remember that Yvonne Okwara is going to be joining us a bit later with Kipchumba Murkomen and Junette. We'll continue Right now, and on Case Files, we feature the controversial killing of a member of parliament 28 years ago. Was Awiti Ongili killed by political rivals? Join Dennis Onsarigo on Case Files immediately after this news broadcast. Here's a sneak preview of what to expect then.
Kufika kitu kama saa 5:30 usiku, tunasikia kitu kama kelele kidogo.
You know, that thing happened immediately when Moi toured this area.
Mbala was rich as he was, with or without parliament. So what did he have to gain?
You feel bitter, but later on you say life must continue.
The person who did the postmortem also died. The driver also died.
And to us, it was like a drama. How does everything work out so quickly?
And that is coming up on Case Files later this evening. Right now, though, hundreds of people are running away from the troubled Lamu region, where over 85 people have been killed in the past 3 weeks.
Our KTN crew met travelers fleeing from Hindi area, where 12 of 21 people were killed on Saturday night's twin attacks.
Here's Ferdinand Omondi with that report.
Travelers at the Hindi stage in Lamu County crowd a bus which is on its way to Mombasa. There is hardly enough space to fit all, and it's a race to get as far away from here as possible. Many others stay on the sidelines hoping for luck in the next available vehicle. Locals say they have been living in droves since gangsters raided homes around the area and slaughtered 12 men. Not even a reassurance from the vice president who visited here the previous day has calmed their nerves.
Unaambiwa mko na usalama. Alafu leo siku madugu zetu wanauawa kule.
The manner of Saturday night's killings was most chilling. The attackers fished out men from their houses, made them kneel, tied their legs, then tied their hands behind their backs before slaughtering them. Locals speak of a man with long beards who did all the slaughtering. Mama Miriam Jeri was in the house when they dragged her husband out after reportedly asking him to show his identity card.
Wakamfunga rafu wakampeleka kwa barabara, lakini sio kwa barabara sana, ni hapo tu karibu na mlango. Sasa ndio wakammalizia, hata akipiga nduru nilikuwa ninamsikia tu.
The man, Miriam says, came back to the house, ransacked it, took all the food stuff and left. She is now fleeing to Thika with her 3 children. Salome Wajir says she spent that night away from her home on a hunch after memories of Mpeketoni killings haunted her on Saturday, only to be awoken by desperate calls from her husband later that night.
Akasema sasa mimi ujue ninakufa kwa sababu moto umewaka kabisa na naona kabisa nitakufa.
She would later learn that her house was torched while her husband was still in it. Salome believes the move was aimed at driving her away from the only place she has called home all her life. The unprecedented violence and killings in this region is now forcing hundreds to flee. Many of them are leaving what they have come to know as home, going to areas that used to be home, while others still are simply living, not knowing where the next home will be. For Mzee David Ndongo, this is a sad situation brought about by politics and partisan interest aimed at infringing on his right to live anywhere in this country.
Kutoka niingie hapa, ninaambiwa nitoke. Nina miaka 34. Nimezalia hapa, nimesomesea hapa, na nilikuja nikiwa kijana. Ukiniambia ati watu wetu wa Mbara, nirudi kule nimetoka. Sasa wananielekeza wapi?
Most of the residents in the affected areas of Mpeketoni, Hindi and Gamba settled here in 1972 on orders of President Jomo Kenyatta. They have since thrived here and established themselves as astute farmers. Most of the farm produce that supplies Lamu Island comes from this area.
Hii jambo inaoendelea saa hii imedhuru hawa wenyeji ambao wamewawa, hata wenyeji hapa imewadhuru kwa sababu kitu kinaitwa chakula akiji huku tena.
The government has sent security forces to comb the area for the killers who are believed to be around. However, tension is high amid constant rumors of fresh attacks, which even prompted a sting operation in the morning. It was a false alarm.
Tuko na majeshi ya kutosha ya kulinda wananchi. Usilete panganga zako, usilete uvumi wako kuharakisha watu.
Ferdinand Mondi, KTN, Hindi, Lamu County.
Well, security is one of the reasons why courts say that they are launching the Okoa Kenya movement, one of its 13 resolutions. And we're asking you this evening whether you support one of their other resolutions, the call for a national referendum. I have a tweet here from Victor Odiambo. He says, I do support the calls for
Welcome back. You're watching KTN Prime. Let's start with some news that we've just received. 6 people have been injured in Wajir town after a grenade was hurled inside a food kiosk. 6 people injured in Wajir town after a grenade was hurled inside a food kiosk. We'll, of course, continue to update you on this story as soon as we get the details.
Right now, though, let's go to a current conversation. Of course, after Saba Saba, the question that everyone is asking is what next? And we're going now back to our talk studio where Yvonne Okwaro is sitting down with Junet Mohammed and Kipchumba Morkaman to answer that question. Yvonne, I think you can pick up where you left off.
Yes, and indeed, getting into the issues now, and of course with that breaking news report from Wajir is where we started off with security. Junet, you've mentioned this in your list of resolutions today about runaway insecurity. Your solutions to that and in terms of going forward with this?
You know, Yvonne, providing solutions to security is not our business. It is the business of the government of the day, the people who claim to be government at this time. Ours is to raise the alarm and tell the government that's sleeping on the job that Kenyans are dying.
Isn't it also to offer solutions, your job, alternative solutions?
Exactly, that's why we ask for dialogue, so that we can tell them on the table that this is how we see things and this is how we feel things should be done.
Give us some of those solutions now.
There are a number of them, especially, you know, first of all, one of the biggest complaints Kenyans are raising about insecurity is the way the security system of the country is being run. They feel that it's an ethnic cocoon. It's not, you know, a Kenyan, it's not a broad-based system of security in this country. Other than Olelenku, who's just at the top there, they feel the rest are coming from one region. So that is making Kenyans lose faith and lose hope in the people who are providing security for them. Now, number two, there are other issues that have been, I can say there have been problems that have been there before, but we thought Jubilee, with the hype campaign they did before, you know, taking, you know, things from us, is I thought they will change the welfare of the police. They will, you know, improve the, you know, the living conditions of the police. Nothing has happened so far. Kenyans are dying as
right
now as we speak this evening. There are 6 people injured in Wajir. There are 20 or so who died 2 days ago in Hindi, in Lamu, in Mpeketoni, Isili, Kikomba, all over the country. When we tell them that we want to discuss these things with you people as opposition, because we are also stakeholders in this country as opposition, we lead people. We believe we have 70% of the population of this country.
Okay.
They don't want to listen.
All right. Senator, they're asking for visible, decisive action to deal with runaway insecurity. Do you think that has been done by the Jubilee government?
First of all, let me first acknowledge that we are facing a very difficult situation in our country. And Mheshimiwa Ababu Namwamba wrote a very good article last week, about how Americans responded to that kind of insecurity.
It's so sad because, you know, the top management of security that Junaid is talking about was there in the Grand Coalition government. The former Prime Minister was, you know, joint partner. They passed even the names of the Inspector General and the Deputy. They agreed with the President and, you know, it went to the appointments. All those people were there. But that is not even my concern. My concern is not even the tribe of the person who is holding the office. It's the competence of that person to be able to deliver on security. What saddens me, Yvonne, is the argument by court to tell us that they have solutions, but unless we dialogue, and their dialogue must also come with condition of removal of IBC and so forth, we will not tell you what is the solution. Right. Because in the American situation, they changed the law. They improved the coordination of various security agencies. The only person who has been able to table such a law is Kithure Kindiki, the Senate Majority Leader, about improving the coordination of the military and the police and so forth, which are proactive actions. Two, we must not forget that the reason why we are facing Al-Shabaab situation is because of a terrible immigration policy and lapse of issues of immigration.
All of which
again, yes. Yvonne,
all right.
You know,
let's talk about the decisive action. Yeah. Because to be fair, Senator, the upsurge in insecurity in the country since last year, it is due to our forces perhaps being in Somalia and a number of other issues that you would like to say came from the previous government.
That's not true.
However,
Ethiopia have forces in Somalia.
Right.
Many other countries in the region, Uganda. Let's not blame our forces.
Okay. All right.
The problem is that we are facing historical situation where we have lapsed in terms of corruption in the immigration department. And in fact, the other day I was asking Kajwang, because he was presiding over that ministry, that instead of him giving ultimatums and praising and singing songs about bombs, he should be saying that we failed here and we want you, Jubilee government, to fill these holes.
Okay.
Those are the suggestions. We want to have clear suggestions.
Let me give you something that you said in the Senate. You said that you want to see heads roll.
Yeah.
And you would accept nothing less.
Yeah.
Heads are yet to roll.
Yeah.
At least at the top level of security.
Yes. Actually, in fact, I was shocked because when I said that we need to improve the management of the security at the highest level, CORD went to Ntulele and they announced that we are protecting Olelengu as CORD, and Murkomen and Kindiki want to remove him. I never even said anything about Olelengu. My suggestion to the president is that perhaps at a certain level of the management of security, he needs to either rejig or include other people. But let's go to what we have done. Let's talk about what we have done. Let's talk about what we have done.
Okay.
We have bought enough police vehicles. If you go to many parts of this country, you have now 5 or 10 police vehicles, between 5 and 10 police vehicles in every county.
Right.
We have recruiting 10,000 policemen next week, Monday. Okay. We are investing in the equipment of the police. The county government, some of which have done a good job, is to buy vehicles.
Jeanette?
But it doesn't mean that that has solved the problem. We must work together towards that solution.
Jeanette?
Yvonne, let me say one or two things. One, let's not bury our head in the sand by saying all the time that the coalition government did this and the coalition government did that. Now we have a present government. That is the past government. Number one. If we are to discuss the coalition government, the current president was the deputy prime minister of that government. The current deputy president was the minister for agriculture and minister for higher education. So all these people in that government, even the ones who are running the country now. Number two, we sent our soldiers to Somalia and we gave them a name that Operation Linda Inchi. And their main purpose was to go there, kill and capture Al-Shabaab. Not to go there and change Kahawa barracks and Langata barracks to Kismayo and go and stay there, and you know, as though you have changed your barracks now from Kenya.
All right, now that you've brought that up, and because you did mention steps of withdrawal from Somalia, Kipchumba, are we hearing of a planned withdrawal? Maybe that might also help to keep the Kenyans patient to bear the risk that we are undergoing right now due to Operation Linda Inchi, which is now under the umbrella of AMISOM.
If I was Al-Shabaab, I would really celebrate with CORD's rally and say that I have now destabilized their own country, because security issues require collective support. In fact, the only thing that makes people, all countries in the world, to rally together is matters of security. I think withdrawing our soldiers from Somalia is an act of cowardice.
But we cannot stay there indefinitely.
No, I'm just saying we have enough soldiers.
Al-Shabaab is also attacking us here, and they're still there.
Okay, can I talk now?
Yes.
We have enough soldiers in our country if we use the necessary strategy to ensure that we deal with the security problem. I don't think really it's the absence of human resource, enough human resource, although that is being rejected. I think what's important is to ensure that we change the strategy, we bring better ideas to the question, and so forth. And I think it can't happen overnight.
It can't happen overnight.
But
however,
the steps are being
Kipchumba, we cannot stay in Somalia indefinitely.
Well, I would lie to you, Vaughn, if I tell you that I know the intelligence report that will make me, as a politician, to wake up one morning and say, military must come.
Well, it's not obviously something that's going to happen immediately, but at some point, we cannot continue to occupy another competent
maybe
person.
Junaid is more. If it was a military person, I was like, well, maybe I would be competent to say that. I'm not.
So for you, we would continue to stay there?
Until we are advised by our top security people in the army.
At which point there will be a plan to leave?
Advise, yes.
Yvonne?
Okay.
Yeah. I will lie if I say I know anything about it.
The last thing on security. First of all, Senator Murkomen should tell us the truth. Reason being, we have soldiers in Somalia at the moment who are fighting Al-Shabaab. But we are still feeling the effects of Al-Shabaab as tonight in Wajir. So I thought by sending the soldiers to Somalia, we should have curtailed. And what even made us send soldiers to Somalia is the attacks Al-Shabaab did in Coast. And still Al-Shabaab are attacking us. Number two, I don't think the government is serious about internal security. For example, we have a rally today at Uhuru Park. We have 15,000 soldiers who are guarding that rally when people are dying in other parts of the country. They're dying in Peketoni, they're dying in Wajir. So my point is...
Your point on that is
priority. The government has not prioritized the security of the people they are leading as a very important matter.
Okay, let's move on to, just very quickly because we are running out of time, another issue, the disbandment of the IEBC. Jeanette, you've talked about that. However, many would say you are talking about disbanding a commission who you say mismanaged the elections, of which you are a beneficiary. Shouldn't you also relinquish your elective position before pointing fingers at IEBC?
I agree with you. You know, I'm not a beneficiary of IEBC. I'm a beneficiary through the elections done by the people of Suna East. The 32,000...
But the election which you say was mismanaged by the IEBC?
32,000 votes I got, I'm a beneficiary of that as a leader.
But you say IEBC mismanaged the
number
process,
two,
Jeanette.
the process, why we are saying IEBC must be disbanded is in 2007 we had an election. We fought over it. We formed a commission called Kirigla Commission to go around the country and seek views of the people on how we can have a credible election in 2013. By then it was supposed to be 2012. What happened? We spent 10 billion shillings to buy equipment. 10 billion shillings is enough to build a dual carriage, I think, up to Mombasa. We bought equipment that never worked. We were to have results transmitted online. Okay. We have an IEBC that some of its staff are already in court over corruption.
So you are
unhappy. Do you want us to have faith in the same body to conduct in future elections?
But all of those processes were used in Suna East as well?
No, they used manual.
So you are happy with the manual in Suna East?
It's only that somebody didn't take me to court. I'm very lucky. I didn't have a petition.
So some would say that you're complaining because you did not win the presidency, Jeanette.
Yeah? You see?
Some would say it's because you did not win the presidency.
Not really. The biggest problem is the presidential election, that I must agree.
Okay.
But even myself, I was declared a winner by IEBC, I agree. But it's only that nobody went to court to petition me. I could not.
So of course this is about the presidency.
Yes.
Kipchumba?
Well, I have nothing to say. All these stories about these rallies and so forth, the integral issue is IEBC. Raila was involved in the picking of the chair, Hassan. He was involved in Onswako picking and the commissioners. He was a co-principal. The only reason why he's unhappy now is because he lost, and he would like to pick other people that will be fair to him. He now thinks that UN will be better. I have always said that this coalition calling itself for reform and democracy, which doesn't believe in our institutions, doesn't believe in reform and democracy, should be called a coalition of rhetoric and demagoguery. Because, I mean, there is nothing else. We are building institutions for constitutional posterity, but as long as Raila is not the president, they are thieves.
One statement, I'm sorry, out of time, just to come back to that. Yes.
The issue is not about being Raila being the president or not the president. The issue is having credible, transparent elections in this country.
But you did not have.
It's not about
you had
Raila.
ODM elections.
Let us not condense an electoral process for Kenyans to Raila.
Right.
Raila is just an individual. He's just one person.
But you
He's
know,
so you see,
can I say something to the last one?
Just last being myopic to say that it's Raila who lost.
The just last one, yeah?
Being myopic.
CORD has just had an election the other day. Using the so-called dialogue, he has managed to deal with the issues of the men in black. He has managed to chase Kidero. He didn't even come to the rally today. He has managed to tell Kalonzo, you are not going to be anywhere in the show. So this thing is about one person.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Which show?
Yes.
That should not go and
That should not. I am honestly running out of time.
Well, let me say one word.
One word, please.
Those are rhetorics, what he's telling us.
All right.
We want to have a serious election for this country.
Thank
Whether Raila will be the president or Murkomen himself.
And we have to leave it at that, gentlemen. We have the bulletin to carry on with, and we thank you both so much for coming in and discussing this. Keep your comments coming in on our discussion. Hashtag on Twitter is Siasa Saba Saba. We're taking a short break now. We'll be back with the day's business news with Bonnie Tunya.
Courtesy of the long-awaited Saba Saba rally organized by opposition party CORD, Nairobi featured empty streets and closed shops.
There was parking available across the CBD for most of the day. That's very unusual, and it just says that a lot of people were not present at their workplaces.
And this trickled down to the Nairobi Securities Exchange, which saw subdued trading and less turnover than is normal on an average trading day. This saw the 20-share index shed 16.9 points to close at 4,868.81.
We've seen probably less than half normal trading turnover that we would see on a regular day. So if we use that as an indicator, that could spell how much the economy could have lost.
But while investors stayed away from the NSE, the market did not witness falling prices. And this analyst says a good thing, as the reverse would have signaled the lack of confidence in the government's ability to handle the ongoing crisis.
Prices have sustained, and that's a very good thing. That's a good indicator. It just shows how confident investors remain on the market.
Moreover, because investors take a long-term view of the country, they are willing to focus on the underlying fundamentals and ignore most of the short-term shocks.
Investors have adjusted themselves to some level of political noise, and as long as it's not too problematic, they are willing to hold on in the market.
But now that the rally is done and dusted, the analysts say they expect life will return to normal, which will inspire confidence that the country can indeed balance politics and power the economy.
Will come out even more confident and see that, yeah, indeed, there was nothing to be worried about. This was just a rally, and they've had their say, and let's all move on and focus on growing our economy.
Politics will always be part of us, just like India, where you have a lot of political noise, but it doesn't really stop development from going on.
Adelaide Chongole, KTN Business.
In the 70s and 80s, the cotton industry in Kenya was vibrant and able to feed the local businesses. This, however, has not been the case since early 1990s with the collapse of the industry, a situation that has seen the cotton production drop significantly. The government is, however, keen on reviving the sector with 3 billion shillings set aside for the sector. Here's KTN's Charles Kitonga.
It has taken African cotton industries a thick skin to operate as a local manufacturer in the cotton industry for half a century. The days of glory for the sector faded in the early 90s when the industry was opened up, a move that saw the market flood with cheap imports. Since then, businesses in the sector have had to incur the high cost of importing raw materials from the neighboring countries.
We have to incur transport costs, for instance. Cotton is a very light and very expensive product to transport. And so instead of manufacturing at, say, a lower cost, we have to also add the transport element of importing our raw materials.
Kenya's annual cotton production stands at 10,000 metric tons against a potential 40,000 metric tons. The government has, however, shown commitment towards revival of the sector with the allocation of 3 billion shillings for the development of textile and leather industries in 2014-2015 fiscal year. This move, which will result in improving production, attracting new investment and job creation, has been received as good news by players in the sector.
All these will allow manufacturing to really succeed, and I feel it's a very big and important pillar for Kenyan and for the Kenya economy going forward.
However, players in this industry remain concerned about the huge cost of production. Insufficient infrastructure as well as high expenses on energy are costing the businesses a big deal, a factor that makes it difficult for their products to compete in the market.
Products are coming in and really penetrating our market, and local manufacturers such as ourselves are finding it very difficult to compete for value because of the high costs of undertaking manufacturing here within Kenya.
For investors in the cotton sector, the future will only be brighter even as the government partners with them to meet various needs in the community. Charles Gitonga, KTN Business.
And finally, a tussle is brewing between the Federation of Kenyan Employers and Nssf over the new deduction rates. Nssf has been asking employers to implement the new rates that will see deductions shoot from 200 shillings to 1,080 shillings a month. However, the industrial court suspended the new rates last month, with several parties including FKE challenging the move. Higher contributions will see Nssf transform from a provident fund to a pension scheme, offering an expanded range of social safety nets as opposed to the current lump sum payouts. FKE is, however, seeking an extension, asking instead that the rates be implemented in January of 2015. So that's business. Let's take a look at the numbers now on the Financial Market Review.
Financial Report, brought to you by KCB Home Loans.
Nyanza players played at the Gusii Stadium. Their other experience providing the difference. The Lakeside outfit cruised past Gucha Star Boys 2-0 in the knockout match.